I know people don't like hearing this, but things are actually heating up pertaining to Chuck Schumer and what's going on. We're hearing more and more about how receptive he is about getting safe banking to pass. That this potentially, I don't know how close it was during lame duck session, but, when we look at this right now, how significant is Chuck Schumer's mention of cannabis banking as a key policy issue in the upcoming work period? Like how important is that? How valuable is that? Hey everyone, thanks for checking in. I'm your host, Shad Dales, and this is our latest Trade to Black podcast. A lot of rumors floating around in the cannabis industry, which traditionally is quiet this time of year. It's starting to see some movement, and it's very nice to see. So let's bring in the gents. Welcome, lead financial writer of TDR, Benjamin A. Smith. Good day. How was the weekend, sir?
Weekend is really well. Looking forward to another Trade to Black. We have a good one on tap.
Yes, I like this stuff that's moving. Anthony Verrill, good to see you. How are you?
That's good. Good. It was a good weekend. Cannabis is moving. Curaleaf was up 30% last week. I've got zero complaints right now.
So let's start with that. I want to start. I don't know how much you guys are. You've obviously followed the rumors. I don't know how much you know over Intel, but maybe give me your opinion on these latest rumors involving Curaleaf and Cronos. Drum it down. Like, why would this make sense for Curaleaf? And I'll start with you, Ben. Why would Curaleaf want to purchase Cronos? Are these rumors valid? Do you think this could happen?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm still trying to figure out what the deal is here myself, to be perfectly honest. I see a lot of chatter online on social media, Twitter, the Twitter sphere, for example, that people think that Curaleaf are interested in Cronos Cash. But then I would sort of, refute that and say, well, why don't they just raise with their $1 billion shelf prospectus, which is currently out there? So basically, they could issue shares for that cash instead of buying Cronos at premium. So that doesn't really, strike a doesn't really resound with me too much. But they also have some international assets. They have some good assets in Israel. They can export cannabis to the EU, from my understanding, and they have one of the number one brands in Canada in the Spinach brand, I believe it is. So
Yeah.
they do have some good pieces there. But why Curaleaf would be interested in them right now, I think is still a little bit of a mystery to me. I think there's a lot of speculation of what that could be, and I'm still trying to parse that out.
Anthony,
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
I was going to say, Shad, I think you said the best word. Like, how does this make sense? I don't think it does make sense. If I'm being completely blunt, I mean,
So
Ben
is
and
it
I
a
could probably
rumor?
sit here.
You think it's
Ben
just
and
a
I could
rumor?
probably sit here and dissect it for an hour, and I don't think we could come up with a substantial reason as to why it makes sense. I think it's a rumor. I mean, Boris is pretty smart. He's not going to buy a company, like Ben said, to pay a premium on cash. That makes no sense. The Israeli asset could be complementary to their EU footprint that they're putting together, but at the same time, it's not worth what
Yeah.
they're going to have to pay in a premium. I'm curious to see what an MSO would do with $800 million, with $1 billion. I mean, I don't think there's a real place to put that money right now to work. It's almost too much as an investor. I don't want to see the dilution that's going to occur. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it. I can't make an argument for it making sense.
They'd sit on that for a while, don't you think?
Yeah, but why? Why are you going to pay a premium? You're almost at free cash flow. Why are you going to pay a premium for cash today when you could be making it a couple quarters down the road and have a self-sustaining business? You're not going to have to dilute shareholders and piss everybody off right now.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the
It doesn't
mergers
make
that have taken place in this sector too have been of the smaller type. A couple dispensaries here and there in the single states to build up footprint, and usually even those are like cash flow accretive, right?
Yeah.
So that Kronos is not at that level, I don't believe yet, and I think they're still pretty far away. I'd have to review the financials, but obviously there's something that they like there. People also point to Altria. Of course, Altria made that $1.8 billion
Yeah.
investment a couple years back in Cronos. So maybe there's something there. But even then, when I sort of analyze it in my head, I'm like, okay, we're not even at safe banking yet. So, perhaps they're looking at, a couple moves ahead. Perhaps they're playing 3D chess and I'm
That's
not
what I'm
seeing it.
thinking.
But it just seems a little early for, the reinvention of big tobacco, big alcohol getting into these cannabis companies again. So I'm not sure what the dynamics are. I'm interested and we'll see what happens.
Don't you love these rumors? They're starting to stir up again. It's like 2017 all over again, huh, gents?
They're great. I'm just hoping that there's some sustainability here.
Yeah.
As a Curaleaf shareholder, I didn't buy on that news. I welcome the news. It created a catalyst, but I don't know how if this is going to be short lived or if this is going to be real. I
Yeah.
was strongly considering selling my position on Friday, taking the 30% gain, and just re-entering at another time.
Yeah.
With how much PTSD this sector's caused over the past
Mhm.
couple of years.
Well, just for our viewers to know, we have reached out to Curaleaf's team. They are in blackout, like just keeping it low key right now. So we'll keep trying to get through to Boris and the team, and hopefully we have them on soon. But just to answer a lot of people's questions, we have reached out. Ben, you mentioned safe banking, so let's switch to Washington. And things, I know people don't like hearing this, but things are actually heating up pertaining to Chuck Schumer and what's going on. We're hearing more and more about how receptive he is about getting safe banking to pass. That this potentially, I don't know how close it was during lame duck session, but, when we look at this right now, how significant is Chuck Schumer's mention of cannabis banking as a key policy issue in the upcoming work period? Like how important is that? How valuable is that?
Yeah, you're referring to the letter that he issued on the weekend, in which he mentioned some of his policy initiatives and goals for the July Senate session and beyond. And cannabis banking was mentioned as part of that. I actually don't think that the letter was actually all that significant, just because we already knew through our contacts and through different sources that Chuck would be, attempting to bring this on the agenda. Right. I think the big sticking point, as we've mentioned before, is whether he's going to add some amendments that sort of get the Republican senators on board, which purportedly have enough votes now to get them off and to move off their position. So it's still tenuous right now. We got to keep in mind with that letter that there was a bunch of other policy initiatives in there. So it wasn't like he singled out uh, cannabis banking and that it was like the one thing in there that stood out. There was a bunch of things, including AI technology and
Yep.
policy and different things. But it was good to see anyway. I mean, if it didn't show up on that letter, it would create a lot more questions than than if it wasn't there to begin with. So it's good. It's on track. I think it's looking good right now. Let's just see what amendments come in the bill when it gets to the Senate and pass markup vote, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. A pleasant surprise nonetheless. Is the future here, Anthony?
What future? I told you. I mean, I'm not gonna get bullish or super speculative until I see ink on paper. Chuck's faked us out before. Chuck will probably fake us out again at some point down the road. I really do think that something is going to get done though.
Yeah,
I think we're on a collision course with either safe passing, descheduling, rescheduling. Something is going to happen in Washington that pushes the cannabis agenda
agreed.
forward.
Agreed.
What is going to happen? Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, what factors do you think will play a role in determining whether or not SAFE indeed does pass, Ben?
Well, I think the factors are strictly the amendments that Chuck is going to introduce to the bill after markup vote, right? He's indicated that he's probably going to do this, and he's done this before with the COA Act, separate act, granted, but how there's a bunch of social justice and expungement measures in there that made it completely unpalatable, and the bill was doomed to begin with, right? So I think he's going to try to do the same thing with SAFE. It may not be as robust as with COA, but he's got a base to appease. And but that being said, I truly think that he wants safe banking to happen. This is kind of what we're hearing and what we're kind of parsing in the media, and it just how much social justice will he attempt to put in the bill, and is that enough to torpedo? So I'm kind of on the fence right now. I'm leaning positive, but you never know with Chuck because he's got a base, and a lot of that base is progressive.
Well, this is historically a slow time of year, market performance wise for the industry, but this is clearly these rumors having an impact. MSOs is seeing 8-week highs. This is like there's something here, I feel like, and a lot of people are obviously optimistic. So, as much as cannabis has been, as you said earlier, Anthony, PTSD for a lot of investors over the past 3-4 years, it's still alive and well. They're still waiting to see us turn the corner, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean it's happening. I mean, I bought calls in MSOS on Friday. On the close, I'm up on them right now. As we'll see what happens going into the close.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's momentum in the sector. There's price action to the upside, volumes there. MSOS is moving. It's we're showing signs of life.
How
That
sustainable do you think the momentum is?
I have zero idea. I I hope it's sustainable. I hope we get a couple more catalysts here, something somewhere. We're going to need some tidbits of information though here to keep this moving.
Yeah.
There's no way for the next 2-3 weeks does everything just go radio silent and we continue this momentum.
Mhm.
Nothing in the cannabis sector is algo driven. It's all trader driven, unfortunately. But there are large buyers right now in MSOS. If that and there, it looks like there's people accumulating it
You want
for good standing. The
well,
guys that accumulate it too don't move unless they know something.
yeah, well, you wonder how much momentum will build, especially after summer recess is completed. When is the dates of summer recess? Do you guys know, top of your head? Is it August, first 2 weeks?
Yeah, no, they're gone
Yeah.
the whole month.
Yeah.
Both the House and the Senate. The whole thing shut down.
Yeah.
Capitol
I
Hill.
think there's a better chance that you see Joe Biden deschedule cannabis and force Becerra's hand, which then it goes to FDA and HHH. The only problem is the DEA can shoot it down. But
Mhm.
Joe Biden appointed the head of the DEA, and the head of the DEA that was appointed was actually not anti-cannabis.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that Biden looks at the data, looks at the numbers, and is like, I need to throw a Hail Mary somewhere. I'm losing on Ukraine. I'm losing on inflation. I'm losing kind of everywhere else, and just throws a Hail Mary and hopes he hits cannabis and it sticks. And he deschedules it. He actually goes through with what he was talking about getting people out of jail, nonviolent cannabis offenders, and just really starts to push the narrative that he told everybody when he ran.
Yeah.
I see that as a much more highly likely scenario than everything coming together was safe.
Do you guys think there's any truth? Like, there's been a lot of people, not a lot, but there's been a few now advocating in Washington. What I mean by that, like, not only lobbyists, but executives within these cannabis companies. Um, and they're getting a real idea of the current state of the industry, the amount of crime that's taking place when there's not the proper financial system for a lot of these companies. But do you believe a lot of these senators and people in Congress maybe pro safety more than anything versus say pro cannabis? And if so, like that's got to be a benefit to get things across the line, don't you think? Ben, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's just a byproduct of the messaging that's been happening, overall, and just receiving that the news and the anecdotes on social media and hearing it from their constituents over time. It's quite apparent that it's pretty bad right now in a lot of ways, and you really saw the crime sort of ramp up. I would say towards the end of 2021, when it was first a candidate to be in the National Defense Authorization Act. Then as the media had started getting that cycle, people started to realize, like the criminal element started to realize, hey, these dispensaries have all this cash, right? Because it started
Yeah.
circulating in the media, right? And then from that time, I don't have any hard stats, but I think that's when the crime really started to ramp up, from what I can tell, and then into 2022. So I think it's just something that they've been exposed to over time, and that the crime is, you can't really dismiss it now. It's all over the place.
Yeah, I think people can't
I,
overlook that. You may disagree, Anthony, but it's some of the
I
conversations perhaps
disagree.
you do.
I disagree completely. I think it's a good point. I mean, I think it's a valid point that's got merit. But you want to talk about politicians caring about safety? Look at fucking Chicago. Look at Philadelphia. Look at Baltimore. Look at California. I mean, you're talking about you think that these politicians have an isolated interest in the safety of the cannabis industry when they don't even have an interest in the general
You
safety
don't
of their
think when there's job
constituents.
you don't think there's truth to that with jobs attached? Like there's as many as 500,000 jobs across the country in the
There's people
industry.
killing each other in Chicago every day, and the politicians don't do anything about it. I mean, no, I don't buy that argument whatsoever. I do not buy that argument whatsoever. I don't think the politicians care about the safety of cannabis businesses. The tax revenue is going to find its way to City Hall one way or another if these companies want to operate, and that's all that really matters. I just don't buy the argument.
So what then do you think, just for people to understand, um, to get descheduled, or more importantly, not to say more importantly, but first things first, we want to focus on incremental, as we've said before, Anthony, not comprehensive, but what's the first thing that needs to happen? We have the right amount of signatures, the Democrat side. We've heard rumors about having the right amount of signatures on the Republican side. So what is standing in safe banking's way right now, especially if Chuck Schumer is, from what we're hearing, being very receptive pertaining to this?
I mean, what's standing in their way is it's just gridlock in Washington. No one wants to get along. No one wants to get, neither side wants to give each other a win. I mean, that bill has got to be mutually beneficial to both sides. Both sides need to think they're winning, and then both sides need to know that they're winning once it gets signed and passed.
Yeah.
And they need to know that it's resonating and it's socially acceptable with their constituents, that they can pass it, they can legalize cannabis, and it's not going to affect their base. If those conditions are met, it's going straight through.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
I think it's
not,
more that, like
yeah,
what you
yeah,
said. I don't think it's about win, and this was a bipartisan bill. So I don't think safe banking is something that the Democrats are going to hold and get a big
no,
win out of. But I think it's more about the measures that they add into it. Is that palatable to their base? And if they go full bore on the social justice, I mean, and then Republican votes for it, how can their it might be not very good for their constituents, and then he's going to have to answer to those people, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think everybody kind of wants it, as long as it kind of sticks to a safe banking bill, as long as it doesn't let like hardcore criminals on the street or whatever it is that they want to introduce.
yeah.
And then if it does that, then they'll keep the votes that they have now, and it should pass.
Because the fact of the matter is, even if you want to make the argument that they could be harming their base and some of their constituents don't agree, the fact of the matter is, the safe passes tomorrow and cannabis gets descheduled, that's still going to be to the states. Any of these Republicans from a red state, you're not going to have legal cannabis and everyone smoking weed the next day.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be exactly what's going on now.
How
And
much
it's going to be a democratic process that they can vote it in if they want.
Joe Biden's approval rating is so bad right now. If he were deschedule cannabis and pass safe banking, how much of an impact would this have on his approval rating? You think
Yeah, I
that's
don't think it would have very much. No. I mean,
Zero.
again, yeah, it's been said before, but I'll reiterate it. Cannabis is like, while we cover it and we think it's a big deal, and our investors do, and our people on our channel, it's probably like the 15th to 20th biggest issue in the United States, right? It's below
If
the
that.
economy, the war,
Yeah.
the border, the education system, taxation. It's pretty much down the list, right? So I don't, could it help a little bit with some of the base, especially with the younger portions of the base? It could, and maybe that's why he wants to hold in his back pocket, because he's going to need all the support he can, given that his approval numbers are pretty much at historical lows for a presidency. But I mean, is it going to move the needle so much that like a war, like you stop the war or something like that? Probably not. But as an ancillary issue, it could help.
The gig's up. I mean, Biden's gig is up. Like, people on the left are against him now. People on the right are against him now. Like, there's nothing saving him.
Yeah.
It's no one wants.
I'm just
him here
thinking for a
anymore.
last-ditched effort, if they're just trying to like get any kind of win on their side right now, as to what kind of influence this would have.
Well,
Like, I think
the only thing.
Go ahead.
The only, when I'm saying last ditch effort, or when I'm talking about a win, I'm talking about it for the Democratic Party, not for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Because I really firmly believe that there's nothing that man can do that is going to boost his approval rating and put him back in the White House for another term.
So
no one
maybe-
wants him there.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, you even see liberal mass media outlets are turning against him now. They're all starting to create a negative Joe Biden narrative, and they're creating a positive Gavin Newsom narrative that they're starting to push. No one wants that man in office.
No money in good journalism. Controversy stems lots of ratings and money, and I don't think this is a Trump thing. I think this is an everything. Like, you wonder where the future of, I don't want to talk about politics, but the way the media landscape is, it's like after every president's done their term, and they're just going to come after him in order to generate ratings, because no signs of.
Well, he's setting the I mean, the Democrats are they're setting the precedent going after Trump. Like,
I know
it's a joke.
Last thing I want to touch on, there was an announcement in psychedelics, big player in the space, the biggest player, Compass Pathways. They basically outlined a timeline for commercialization for psilocybin therapy. Great to hear the word commercialization, Ben, pertaining to this industry and a drug, because it almost makes you feel it's about not if, but when. However, the year 2027, that's a ways away. So, what's your thoughts on, this is a ways away. The stock is moving here short term, but this is still 3, 4, maybe even 5 years out, right?
Yeah, I think so. The stock ran last week. I think it was up close to 19%, and that led the sector. The ETF PSIL was up over 10%, even though the biotech index was down. Nasdaq Biotech Index and the biotech sector in general was down, and the broad indices were down as well. So it
Yeah.
had a really good week. It was led by Compass, and they made some comments at the Psych Global Symposium in London. They also announced a $50 million non-dilutive raise, which helped, and it was up and it led the sector. Now, the comments that you mentioned were mentioned at the symposium in London, and that surprised me a little bit. And it was notable because we hadn't really had a firm timeline before. Unlike MDMA assisted therapy, we know that the commercialization timeline is end of the year of 2024. This was the first time we really got that on the psilocybin side, and it surprised me a little bit because, as we know, Australia has already gone live,
Yep.
and MDMA and psilocybin for assisted therapy is live there, and yet the FDA is forcing them to do this very big, expensive trial, and that's still 4 years down the road. And if they're saying 4 years, then you probably think it's probably more like 5 or in 2028. So
Why
at
is
least we have
that?
a
Why
timeline.
is that?
Well, generally, I think as a general thing, not specifically to Compass, but when company officials give a timeline, they're generally going to give the most beneficial timeline.
Yeah.
Probably like an honest one, but also the one that's probably the most aggressive, right? Because they want to keep investors focused and interested. So if they're saying 2027, I have to believe that that's probably either their best guess or their best positive guess. And there's always hurdles along the way that companies encounter. So usually timelines get pushed out somewhat.
Anthony, you agree with that?
I do for the most part, but I mean, I honestly think that Compass might have been giving the worst case scenario as far as timelines go. 2027 seems like a long way, even where they are right now. I had sticker shock when I saw that headline. I was like,
I
oh
know.
shit. It's like you really need to get retail investors out of the game, because there's no retail investors that are going to deploy capital today and hang around until 2027.
We are seeing some
Um,
institutional buying though, which is encouraging,
this
right?
is an institutional game. This is an institutional game.
Yeah.
But I think Ben's spot on, and I think it's positive. I mean, if they're going to guide, at least tell the market exactly what's expected, and then the market's going to react and set expectations. And apparently, whatever everyone's saying right now in psychedelics, people are buying because volumes are up, prices are up, and something's moving.
And Compass is up another 7% today as we do this
I know.
podcast. So I mean,
What
Yeah,
somebody's
yeah.
liking this.
What's this say about companies involved in MDMA then? Like, because you've heard rumors where MDMA is up first and psilocybin is behind it. But if we're talking about, another 3-4 years for psilocybin, that's a long runway for companies that have sound business models. And I know there's not a lot, but for those that do, that pertaining to MDMA, big growth opportunity, would you guys think?
I Yeah, I think MDMA is going to have a first mover advantage, obviously, in the space. But also, I mean, when you look at the therapeutic aspects of these things and you look at what they're actually going after, I mean, there are certain indications that psilocybin is being targeted for that MDMA is not being targeted for. I mean, I think there'll be different use cases for each drug, and I mean, unfortunately, psilocybin is going to take longer to get on the shelf,
Yeah.
potentially than MDMA. But psilocybin is also probably going to be able to use a lot of key learnings that you're going to see from MDMA that are going to save them money, that are going to create efficiencies.
Good point.
And MDMA's it might be better to be an investor in a psilocybin based business versus MDMA, because MDMA is probably going to move fast and break things. Psilocybin is going to be able to sit back and watch and get key learnings on how to deploy the business, how to scale the business, and the mishaps aren't going to happen to them.
Pay attention, because people have FOMO in this day and age, just about everything in life, right? All right, gents, this has been good. We'll check back with you guys later this week, but appreciate the update. Let us know if you have any questions, any feedback that you want to know about. Give us your insight on what you think about Washington. And we're going to actually reach out to Rob Seekers this week and have him on later this week and give you updates as to how things are developing in Washington. Anthony, Ben, appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, everyone. So what'd you think of the interview? Did you like what we asked? Is there any information you want to learn more of? Then leave a comment below and let us know what you think. As usual, share this video with your network, smash that like button, and most importantly, make sure to subscribe to our channel, because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.